Grace Miller was 24 years old when she finally understood something she had feared her whole life. Her family didn't notice when she disappeared. Not after one day. Not after 1 week. Not even after 3 whole weeks. She remembered the night she walked out. It wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches, no slammed doors. She simply packed a small bag, stepped out of the house, and closed the door behind her. She had lived through years of being treated like she didn't exist. Years of speaking and not being heard. Years of doing everything quietly, hoping someone would appreciate it. Years of watching her family love everyone loudly while treating her like empty space. So leaving didn't feel brave. It felt like she was slipping out of a room where no one had ever looked up to see her anyway. She expected, maybe hoped, that someone would call. Maybe her mother. Maybe her father. Maybe one of her siblings. Even a simple "where are you?" would have been enough to make her feel like she mattered somewhere in their minds. But when she turned on her phone after 2 days, she stared at the screen for a long time. There were no missed calls, no messages. Not a single person had asked if she was okay, if she had eaten, if she was safe. Her name didn't appear in any group chat. Her absence didn't start any family discussion. Nothing. It felt like standing in the middle of a busy street where everyone walks past, and no one even bumps into you, because they don't see you at all. The only person who reached out was Aunt Valerie. The same aunt everyone in the family called over-emotional, dramatic, and too much. The one they rolled their eyes at whenever she spoke. The one who always told Grace, "You deserve better. You deserve to be seen." When Grace picked up Valerie's call, she didn't even try to hide the shakiness in her voice. Valerie didn't ask why she left. She didn't ask her to come home. She simply asked, "Where are you, sweetheart?" in a voice that made Grace's chest tighten, because it sounded like genuine care, something she rarely heard. Now Grace was living in a tiny rented room in another city. The walls were thin. The window barely opened. The bed creaked loudly at night, but it was hers. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was rebuilding herself quietly, piece by piece, without someone telling her she wasn't enough. Every morning she woke up and waited to feel guilty for leaving. But the guilt never came. Only a strange sadness, a numbness. A question she kept asking herself over and over. How did they not notice? She didn't know how long she would stay away. She didn't know what her future looked like. But she knew one thing. If her aunt hadn't called, she might have believed she had vanished into the world completely. Grace sat on her small bed one evening, holding her phone, staring at the empty notifications. The silence from her family felt heavier every day. Then she sighed and whispered to herself, almost like she needed to hear the words out loud. "They didn't notice I was gone, until Aunt Valerie exposed everything." Grace grows up in a chaotic family where attention is a currency she never earned. In her house, love was loud, messy, and uneven. If someone got attention, it was because they shined the brightest or caused the most trouble. Grace did neither. She was quiet, gentle, and tried her best to keep peace. But peacekeepers rarely get noticed. Her mother adored Monica, Grace's older sister. Monica was the perfect child. At least that's how her mother always described her. She studied medicine, won awards, and made every family gathering about her success. Whenever Monica entered the room, her mother's eyes lit up. Whenever Grace entered, nothing changed. It was like she didn't exist. Her father wasn't cruel, but he wasn't present either. He worked long hours, came home tired, and preferred silence over conversation. When Monica wanted his attention, he gave it. When Grace tried to talk to him, he usually nodded without listening or walked past her with a distracted, After a while, she stopped trying. Her siblings followed the same pattern. They respected Monica. They ignored Grace. When there were chores or errands to do, everyone called for Grace. If someone forgot their wallet, Grace ran to get it. If someone wanted a glass of water, Grace fetched it. If there was an argument, Grace tried to calm everyone down. She became the mediator, the helper, the quiet shadow who kept things running smoothly. But shadows don't get thanked. Whenever Grace achieved something, a good exam score, a school certificate, her mother would say, "That's nice," and then quickly shift back to talking about Monica's achievements. Grace learned to hide her report cards and awards in a drawer because celebrating them alone felt less painful than being ignored. Years of this emotional starvation shaped her personality. She learned to walk softly, speak gently, and never expect anything in return. She learned that if she didn't show pain, no one would ask about it. If she cried quietly in her room, no one knocked on her door. If she disappeared into the background, no one looked. On the outside, she seemed calm. On the inside, she was drowning. Now in the present day, Grace is 24 and trying her best to build a life that isn't shaped by the wounds of her childhood. She works 2 jobs. One in a small bakery from morning until noon, and another at a bookstore in the evening. Between her shifts, she studies online, trying to finish her degree at her own slow pace. It's exhausting, but she keeps going. Her co-workers think she is shy, but kind. They don't know how much effort it takes for her to speak up. They don't know that she grew up believing her voice didn't matter. Aunt Valerie is the only person who ever truly sees her. Valerie has always been the black sheep of the family, the one everyone criticizes, the one they blame for being too emotional or too outspoken. But Valerie is also the only one who noticed when Grace was hurting. She noticed when Grace's smile didn't reach her eyes. She noticed when Grace's shoulders slumped a little more each year. She noticed the small girl who tried so hard to be useful, hoping someone would see her worth. Whenever things became unbearable at home, Valerie would take Grace out for ice cream or a walk and tell her, "You deserve to be loved loudly, not quietly. You deserve more than this." Grace holds on to those words even now. But deep inside, she is exhausted. She is lonely. She is quietly furious. Furious at the years she wasted trying to win love from people who couldn't even see her. Furious that she had to become strong because her family wouldn't protect her. Furious that she still wonders what she did wrong. Even though she knows the truth, she did nothing wrong. She was just born into a family that only made space for one shining star, and it wasn't her. The stakes for Grace are heavy. If she doesn't get out, fully, completely, emotionally, she knows what will happen. She will shrink even more. She will become smaller than she already feels. She will keep giving pieces of herself until there is nothing left to give. She will drown in a family that never cared to look down and see her gasping for air. That fear, that quiet desperation, pushes her forward. It's the reason she keeps working, studying, saving money, dreaming of a life where she isn't invisible. Because if Grace doesn't escape the cage she grew up in, she knows she will spend her whole life believing she deserved to be forgotten. A family gathering triggers Grace's breaking point. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday dinner, loud, messy, and full of Monica's stories. Grace kept her head down as usual, helping her mother set the table, carrying plates, making sure everyone had what they needed. She didn't expect anything from the night. She never did. But during dinner, her father mentioned how the garden looked so beautiful now, especially the flowers near the back fence. Grace looked up for a moment, surprised. She had spent 2 weekends cleaning that area, pulling weeds, planting new flowers, and fixing the broken fence. She had done it quietly, without asking for praise. Before she could say anything, Monica smiled and said, "Oh, that? Yeah, I fixed that whole part. It was such hard work." The table erupted with compliments. "Monica, you're amazing. You do everything. You really are the responsible one." Grace felt her stomach twist. She waited a few seconds before speaking softly. "Actually, I did that. I fixed the garden." The room froze, not in surprise but in annoyance. Her mother sighed sharply. "Grace, don't start." Her brother rolled his eyes. "Why do you always need attention at the wrong time?" Her father frowned. "Why are you making things uncomfortable?" Monica didn't even look guilty. She just shrugged and said, "Grace, it was just the garden. Don't be so dramatic." Grace felt heat rise in her chest. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't accusing anyone. She just wanted the truth. She just wanted a little recognition. But somehow, she ended up looking like the problem. The conversation moved on quickly, leaving Grace sitting there, feeling small and stupid, like she had spoken out of turn in a world where her voice didn't belong. Later that evening, Grace walked past the kitchen and heard whispers. She wasn't trying to listen, but the words were too sharp to miss. Her mother's voice. "I swear, I only have one real daughter. Monica never causes trouble." Grace stopped breathing for a moment. One real daughter. One. And it wasn't her. The sentence didn't just hurt. It broke something inside her. All the quiet pain she had swallowed for years suddenly became too heavy to carry. She walked to her room. shut the door gently and sat on her bed. Her hands trembled as she looked around the space she had lived in for so long. A room filled with silence, with ignored dreams, with memories of crying into her pillow so no one would hear. That night, without a single tear, she packed a small bag, a few clothes, her wallet, her charger, a notebook. She didn't leave a note. She didn't say goodbye. She knew no one would miss her. And that was the saddest part. She walked out of the front door and closed it softly behind her. The house stayed dark and quiet, just as it always had when it came to her. Grace turned off her phone as soon as she got into the taxi. She didn't want to see any messages. She didn't want anyone calling her back or demanding explanations. She told herself she needed peace, just for a few days. 2 days passed. 2 long days of silence, loneliness, fear, and strange relief. When she finally turned her phone back on, she stared at the screen for a long time. No missed calls, no texts, no voice messages. No one asking where she was. No one checking if she was alive. No one noticing that she had disappeared from their home, their routines, their minds. The truth hit her harder than anything she had ever felt. They really didn't see her. Not even enough to wonder why she wasn't around. She sat on the edge of the small bed in the cheap room she had rented in another city, and took a deep breath. For the first time in her life, she let herself say the words she had been too afraid to believe. I'm gone and they don't care. There was pain in that truth, but there was also freedom. Grace looked around the small space, bare, quiet, lonely, but hers. Completely hers. In that moment, she made a decision. She wasn't going back. Not this time. Not ever the same. The world may not know her yet, but at least out here, she had a chance to know herself. Grace decided to stay gone. Grace builds a small, independent life, one that isn't perfect, but finally feels like hers. She finds a basic job at a cafe near her tiny rented room. The pay isn't great, the hours are long, and the customers aren't always kind, but she is free. No one orders her around. No one treats her like she's invisible. She earns her own money, buys her own groceries, and comes home to a place where no one shouts her name for chores. Her apartment is tiny. It barely fits a bed, a small table, and a narrow wardrobe. The walls are thin, the bathroom door squeaks, and the window only opens halfway. But every time she locks the door behind her, she feels a sense of peace she never felt in her family home. At the cafe, she meets a coworker named Lily, friendly, warm, and always smiling. Lily talks a lot, but she also listens. Slowly, without planning it, Grace becomes comfortable around her. They share small jokes during shifts, take breaks together, and sometimes walk home at the same time. For the first time in her life, Grace feels what real friendship might be like. In her free time, Grace starts writing again. She had always loved writing stories when she was a child, but her mother used to say it was a useless hobby. Now, she fills pages with her thoughts, her memories, her dreams. Writing becomes her quiet therapy. She also begins to learn more about herself. What she likes, what she hates, what she wants. She discovers she loves quiet mornings, soft music, and the feeling of clean sheets after a long day. She discovers she dislikes loud voices and people who take credit for others' work. She discovers she is stronger than she ever realized. Meanwhile, Aunt Valerie is the only person who worries. Valerie keeps trying to convince the family to call Grace, to check on her, to show some concern. But they dismiss her. She's probably just being dramatic, her mother says. She'll come back when she's done sulking, her father mutters. Monica laughs and says, Grace always wants attention. Valerie knows the truth, but arguing with them feels like talking to a wall. So she visits Grace secretly. She brings homemade food, warm hugs, and small envelopes of money, just enough to help Grace get through the tough weeks. She never pushes her to return home. Instead, she tells her, You're doing great. I'm proud of you. Don't let them make you small again. Grace begins therapy too. It is scary at first. She doesn't know how to talk about emotions she spent years hiding. But her therapist is patient. They talk about neglect, emotional abandonment, feeling invisible, and carrying pain in silence. Grace cries for the first time in months, and instead of feeling ashamed, she feels lighter. While Grace slowly heals, her family back home begins to crack. Monica's perfect life starts falling apart. The pressure of medical school grows. She struggles with exams but is too proud to admit it. Her friends pull away. Her confidence breaks. Their mother becomes even more bitter and controlling. She starts blaming everyone, teachers, relatives, even her husband, for Monica's stress. She refuses to see Monica's flaws and refuses to accept that she is part of the problem. Their father retreats further into silence. He stays late at work, eats dinner alone, and avoids family arguments altogether. For months, they don't notice Grace is gone. They assume she is at work, at school, or in her room. But one day, her mother finally checks her room and finds it empty. The closet half cleared. The bed cold and untouched. The drawers almost bare. Panic doesn't hit them. Instead, annoyance does. She's seeking attention. Her mother snaps. She'll come back, her father says with a shrug. Monica, trying to protect her own image, spreads a lie to relatives. Grace ran off with a man. She'll come home when she's done with whatever she's doing. When Aunt Valerie hears this lie, she becomes furious. She storms into the house and demands they stop spreading rumors. She tells them Grace is working, surviving, and trying her best. But they don't listen. As all of this chaos unfolds, Grace receives an email that changes everything. A company in another state offers her a real job, full-time, good pay, a chance to grow. A chance to start over completely. A chance to truly escape the shadows of her old life. Grace stares at the email for a long time, her hands shaking. This job is more than an offer. It is freedom. A new beginning. A chance to choose herself fully. The tension in her life reaches its peak. If she accepts this job, she won't just be away from them. She will be out of reach. She will build a life they never had a part in. For the first time ever, Grace feels hope rising inside her. She can leave the pain behind. She can leave the lies behind. She can leave the people who never saw her. The world outside her small apartment suddenly feels bigger and full of possibility. Aunt Valerie attends a family event and snaps. She has been silent for months, watching Grace struggle alone while the family pretended everything was normal. But at this event, a birthday dinner full of loud laughter, fake smiles and bragging, Valerie can't hold it in anymore. She stands up in the middle of the room and says loudly, "Enough." The room falls quiet. Everyone stares at her, annoyed but curious. Valerie looks around at the familiar faces, Grace's mother, father, siblings, relatives, and her voice shakes with anger. "Do any of you even know where Grace is right now?" Her mother frowns. "Why are you bringing this up? She's probably—" "No," Valerie cuts her off. "She's been gone for months. Months. And none of you noticed." Whispers start. Chairs shift. People look confused. Valerie keeps going, her voice rising. "Grace walked out of your house. She left because she was tired of being invisible. She left because you gave her nothing. Not love, not support, not even basic attention." Grace's father tries to speak. "Valerie, this is not the time." "This is exactly the time," she says sharply. "You all worship Monica. You listen only to her. You praise her, protect her, put her on a throne. But Grace? You treated her like air. Like she didn't exist. She grew up unseen, unheard, unloved." Monica stiffens. "Valerie, stop being dramatic." Valerie laughs, cold, angry. "Dramatic? You want dramatic? Let me show you dramatic." She pulls out her phone. "Grace left me a voice note by accident," Valerie says. "She didn't mean to send it. She was hurt. She was crying. And I'm going to let you hear exactly what your invisible daughter felt." Everyone watches in silence as she presses play. Grace's voice fills the room, soft, broken, shaking. "I don't think they'd notice if I disappeared forever. I don't think anyone in that house would even care." The room freezes. The sound of Grace crying through the speaker hits them like a slap. No one moves. No one speaks. Her mother's face turns pale, then red. Tears slide down her cheeks. But it is impossible to tell if she is crying from guilt or embarrassment that others are hearing the truth. Her father lowers his head, shame creeping into his expression. For the first time in years, he seems to understand what he missed. Monica looks angry, not sad. Her jaw tightens. She doesn't like being exposed. Valerie ends the voice note and says softly, "This is what you did to her. This is the child you ignored. This is the pain you caused." No one responds. The silence is heavy, uncomfortable, filled with the sharp sting of truth. Later that night, Grace is in her tiny apartment, cleaning her small table, when her phone rings. She freezes when she sees the caller ID Dad. It is the first time he has called her in months. Grace stares at the screen, her heart pounding. She thinks of the silence she lived with for years, the nights she cried alone, the way no one noticed she was gone. Then, with a steady breath, she presses decline. She puts the phone down and lets the silence sit. This time it doesn't hurt. It feels like strength. But the night isn't over. An hour later, there is a sudden loud knock at her door. Grace jumps, confused. She isn't expecting anyone, not even Aunt Valerie. She opens the door slowly. Standing there, with messy hair, worried eyes, and fake tears ready to fall, is Monica. "Grace," Monica says, almost breathless. "Please, you need to come home." Grace blinks, shocked. "Why?" Monica hesitates before whispering. "The family's reputation. It's falling apart. People are talking. You need to come back before things get worse." Grace stares at her sister. The same sister who stole her achievements, laughed at her pain, and never once defended her. For the first time, Grace realizes the truth. Monica doesn't want her back out of love. She wants her back because the family image is cracking. She wants Grace to fix it. And Grace is finally strong enough to say no. Grace confronts Monica, refusing to return to a home that never loved her. She stands in the doorway, blocking Monica from stepping inside. Monica's eyes beg for a reaction, but Grace stays calm. "No," Grace says firmly. "I'm not coming back." Monica looks shocked. "Grace, please. Everyone is upset." Mom cried. Dad is embarrassed. People are talking. Grace shakes her head. "You're not here because you care about me. You're here because you're worried about what people think." Monica opens her mouth like she wants to argue, but nothing comes out. For the first time in her life, Grace doesn't hide her feelings. She speaks clearly, strongly, almost gently, but with a strength she never knew she had. "You took credit for my work. You let them ignore me. You watched me suffer and said nothing. Every day, I felt like I didn't exist. I begged for love quietly, hoping someone would notice. No one did." Monica looks uncomfortable, her confidence fading. "I am sorry." But Grace can hear it. The apology isn't from love. It's from shame. From fear. From being exposed. "You're not sorry for what you did to me," Grace says quietly. "You're sorry because everyone found out." Monica's eyes fill with tears, but Grace doesn't move to comfort her. She spent years carrying Monica's emotions, fixing things, making peace. "Not anymore. I'm done," Grace says simply. Monica wipes her eyes and whispers, "So you're really leaving us?" Grace nods. "Yes. I'm leaving the pain. I'm leaving the silence. I'm leaving the version of me who begged for crumbs of affection." Monica has no answer. She turns and walks away slowly, realizing she can no longer control the story, or Grace. After she leaves, Grace closes the door and exhales deeply. For the first time, the room feels warm, safe, hers. A few days later, Grace signs the contract for the out-of-state job. Her hands shake as she types her name, but it's a hopeful kind of shaking, like her future is finally opening up. Then comes moving day. Valerie arrives early in the morning with boxes, snacks, and eyes full of pride. She helps pack Grace's few belongings, books, clothes, one small plant, and her notebooks. "You're really doing it," Valerie says, her voice wobbling. "You're choosing yourself." Grace smiles softly. "You always believed I could." When they reach the new apartment, Grace can hardly breathe. It's bigger, brighter, with tall windows, clean floors, and sunlight pouring in. No memories of pain. No shadows waiting for her. Just a fresh start. Valerie walks around the apartment, touching the walls lightly. "This feels like you," she says, tears forming. "This is the life you deserve." Grace hugs her tightly. It is warm, real, and full of love, the kind she always wished for but rarely received. That evening, after Valerie leaves, Grace sits on the floor of her new place, surrounded by boxes, feeling peaceful. Her phone buzzes. Dozens of messages from her family appear. Long texts, short texts, apologies, excuses, questions. She reads them slowly, without anger, without sadness. Just clarity. For years she chased their love. Now she finally understands she doesn't need it. She replies only once. "I hope you all heal, but I'm done performing for love." She puts her phone down, stands up, and looks around her new home. For the first time, her future feels soft and safe, and it belongs completely to her. Grace stands alone in her new apartment, cooking her first meal on the small stove. The smell of food fills the room, warm and comforting. She hums quietly to herself, feeling a strange sense of peace she never thought she would have. As she chops vegetables and stirs the pan, her mind drifts back. She remembers all the times she begged for a little love, just a kind word, a smile, or someone noticing her achievements. She remembers sitting quietly in her room, holding back tears, wishing someone would see her. She remembers feeling invisible in the house that should have been her safe place. But now none of that matters. She has learned something important. She doesn't have to wait for anyone else to choose her. She can choose herself, fully. Every day, she can decide to love herself, to respect herself, and to protect herself. Her phone buzzes on the counter. She picks it up and sees a message from Aunt Valerie. She opens it and finds a photo attached. It is a drawing from when Grace was a little girl, a simple, smiling figure with bright colors. Valerie had kept it all these years. Grace stares at the drawing, and a soft smile spreads across her face. She feels a warmth in her chest she hasn't felt in a long time. Someone always saw her. Someone always believed in her. Sitting down at the small table, Grace takes a deep breath and whispers softly, almost to herself, "Someone always saw me. And now, I see myself too." For the first time in her life, she feels whole. Not because anyone else told her she was enough, but because she finally knows it herself. The apartment, the small kitchen, the little table. It all feels like hers, and so does the life she is building. She takes a bite of her meal and smiles again. Quietly, confidently, she begins her new life, free from the shadows of the past, strong enough to shine on her own. Hey besties! Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.